On 20 July 1944, a group of Germany's most senior generals took a decision that would alter history, or at least attempt to. They tried to kill Adolf Hitler. They believed that removing him was the only way to save their nation from total catastrophe. Welcome to this story. Make sure you subscribe and comment where you're from, because this is a story that continues to resonate, both for its moral complexity and for the immense stakes involved. The war had dragged on for years. By mid-1944, Germany was fighting on multiple fronts and losing. The Eastern Front was collapsing under the weight of the Soviet advance. The Western Allies had landed in Normandy. Hitler's decisions were increasingly erratic. His generals saw defeats, poor strategy, and a relentless insistence on fighting to the last man. The Wehrmacht's top brass began to realize that Hitler was no longer Germany's protector, but its greatest threat. These men were not casual opponents of the regime. They were the very heart of the German military, seasoned, disciplined, steeped in the traditions of the Prussian officer corps. Men like Ludwig Beck, former chief of the General Staff, Henning von Tresckow, a clever and quietly determined officer in the Eastern Front, Friedrich Albrecht, a staff officer in Berlin, and Klaus von Stauffenberg, the youngest of the group, yet determined and charismatic. For them, Hitler's survival was Germany's ruin. Stauffenberg had endured grievous injuries in North Africa. He lost an eye, his right hand, and 2 fingers from his left hand. He returned to active service, but with each day he grew more convinced that Hitler had to be removed. Their plan, audacious in every sense, was to kill Hitler and then seize power to stabilize Germany, halt the war, and negotiate with the Allies. The stakes were immense. Success meant the possibility of salvation for the nation. Failure meant certain death. The mechanism of their plan was Operation Valkyrie. Originally, it was designed as a contingency plan to maintain order in case of domestic unrest, particularly uprisings against the Nazi regime. The conspirators adapted it to serve a far more ambitious purpose, an internal coup. They intended to activate the reserve army after killing Hitler, seize key locations in Berlin, arrest Nazi loyalists, and install a provisional government capable of negotiating peace. The assassination itself fell to Stauffenberg. On the morning of 20 July, he flew to East Prussia to attend a meeting at Hitler's headquarters, the Wolf's Lair. He carried with him a small briefcase containing a bomb. Every step was calculated. He would place the device near Hitler, excuse himself under the pretense of a phone call, and leave the room, allowing the explosion to do the rest. The hope was precise, ruthless, and final. Back in Berlin, the coup began. Valkyrie was activated, and reserve units moved to secure critical points, communication centers, government offices, and strategic crossroads. The conspirators believed Hitler was dead, and for a brief moment it seemed the coup might succeed. Orders were sent, and soldiers moved under the assumption of legality, as the operation was framed as an emergency to maintain order. But cracks appeared immediately. Confusion and hesitation permeated the ranks. Some officers doubted the reports of Hitler's death, others refused to commit without confirmation. The conspirators' reliance on speed and surprise was their vulnerability. By the time news reached Berlin that Hitler had survived, the tide turned. What was designed to be a surgical strike against tyranny became a chaotic, faltering attempt. Stauffenberg returned to Berlin, determined to lead the next phase, but he arrived too late to consolidate control. General Friedrich Fromm, who had been aware of the plot but remained passive, now acted decisively to save himself. He convened a court-martial at the Bendeler Block, where Stauffenberg, Albrecht, and other conspirators were executed that very night by firing squad. The aftermath was brutal. Thousands of people were arrested. Nearly 5,000 were executed. The Nazi regime used the plot to eliminate dissent, to enforce loyalty, and to demonstrate the cost of betrayal. Judge Roland Freisler presided over trials with theatrical cruelty, often shouting at defendants as if to humiliate them before sentencing. Some conspirators took their own lives rather than face torture or execution. The failure of the July 20 plot had profound implications. Hitler emerged more secure than ever, his regime more ruthless. Propaganda emphasized divine providence and loyalty, presenting the conspirators as traitors to the nation. Yet the conspirators themselves had acted from conscience and conviction. They were patriots, not merely soldiers. Pragmatists who understood the military disaster unfolding, moral actors seeking to stop the moral and strategic collapse of their country. Examining the plot in detail, its failures were clear. The bomb placement, the lightweight building structure, and the reliance on a single device meant the assassination was highly contingent on luck. Communication breakdowns in Berlin undermined Valkyrie. Uncertainty about Hitler's death caused hesitation, while Fromm's sudden action to save himself eliminated leadership and coherence. Every key decision point revealed the vulnerability of even the most calculated plan. The story of the 20 July plot is also a story of courage. These men were fully aware of the consequences. Their moral calculations were stark: to remain loyal to Hitler and be complicit in ruin and atrocity, or to act, knowing death awaited failure. The moral stakes were inseparable from the military ones. Their actions were deliberate, disciplined, and carried the weight of responsibility for a nation in extremis. The failure amplified the regime's brutality. High-ranking officers, civilians, and even young conspirators like Captain Friedrich Clausing were hunted down. Hans Ulrich von Oertzen took his own life to avoid capture. The purge extended to families and associates. It was a wave of state-sanctioned terror, demonstrating both the limits of resistance and the ruthlessness of the Nazi machine. Yet even in failure, the plot revealed fissures in the Wehrmacht. It demonstrated that not all officers were blindly loyal, that moral conviction could lead to action, and that individuals could attempt to alter history, even when their power was circumscribed by authoritarian control. From a German decision-focused perspective, the plot highlights the challenges of military ethics under tyranny. These were men who understood orders, hierarchy, and duty, yet chose conscience over obedience. They calculated risk, weighed alternatives, and acted under extreme uncertainty. Their plan failed not from lack of planning, but from the inherent unpredictability of human and mechanical variables: the movement of a briefcase, the hesitation of officers, the survival of Hitler. The 20 July plot is remembered not merely for its failure, but for its moral courage. Germany today honors these men as symbols of resistance. Memorials, plaques, and public ceremonies recognize the bravery required to act against a tyrant from within the system itself. Their legacy is a reminder that moral courage and ethical action can exist even under the most oppressive conditions. The paradox of July 20 remains striking. Warriors acting to stop a war, insiders rebelling against the very structure that empowered them, men risking all to save their nation. Had the bomb exploded differently, had communications been clearer, had the coup moved faster, history could have changed dramatically. Germany might have negotiated peace earlier, potentially saving hundreds of thousands of lives. But chance, circumstance, and human hesitation conspired to maintain the status quo. This day, though unsuccessful, was a pivotal moral statement. The generals who acted understood the consequences. They gambled their lives, knowing that failure would lead to immediate death. Yet they acted because the cost of inaction, the continued destruction of Germany, the prolongation of a war they could not win, and complicity in ongoing atrocities, was intolerable. Their story endures as a cautionary tale, a testament to courage, and a complex chapter in military history. The moral choices they faced, the precise risks they calculated, and the brutality they confronted offer enduring lessons about leadership, ethics, and the limits of power. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, and comment where you're from. Tell us which part of this daring yet tragic attempt resonates most with you.